No us without all of us. It's as plain and simple as that. You would hope that in today's society that we would be at a point where we wouldn't have to have a label and we all just are part of the human race, but we're not that far yet, and therefore what we need to be doing is, until we get to that point in the future, is come together as the one voice and be us, not just one individual on its own working on doing their own agenda, but all of us. There's no us without all of us, and it's as plain and simple as that.
I think for more established networks, it's establishing a sense of purpose. I think that's where a number of our networks here at KPMG, who've been established for quite a while now, have probably for a period started to think about what's our reason for being. I think sometimes there is a view that networks there are just to kind of protest and sort of raise the issue without really fixing it. And I think where networks can really play a part, and where they'll play a part in the future, is really help organisations understand what are the barriers that are still facing us to achieve true diversity in an organisation, and putting in place plans and helping to roll those plans out in the organisation. So I think they'll become more and more critical as time goes on, because they will establish that sense of purpose.
I think the future for staff networks revolves around doing more of what we're already doing and scaling up the level of influence that the networks can have. I think we do that by getting more people involved in the networks, and all the time that's growing, and I think now we've got about 1,000 people involved in our networks, which is great. And I guess the other step forward we want to make is to get our networks working more closely together, because obviously there's lots and lots of shared issues that cut across all the different networks, and I think there'll be a real power in pulling out what's common to all and making sure that we really deliver on those.
So the future of staff networks, I guess it'd be great to have just one staff network, as in everyone who works for your organisation, who identifies with your values and wants to serve patients. But I guess that if there's any inequality, and there will be perceived inequalities now in the future, and ones that we haven't thought of yet, as different technologies emerge, and there may be people who don't get access to certain things that they should. So I think that if we are championing people who don't have a voice, who are minorities, then I think the role of staff networks will always be that, to champion those people who don't necessarily have a visible voice within an organisation or within a community.
The future for staff networks, well, we're in a very changing world at the moment, aren't we? So it's quite difficult to say where they might go, but from my experience, they are becoming more and more important. And in a climate where we have so much change, where things can be quite unpredictable, having a safe space where you can talk to people who you feel you have some similarities with, that you know that when you go to that group, that voice is going to be heard into senior management, that has never been more important right now, because lots of people are worried about their employment for lots of different reasons. And if we don't give them a place where they can speak and a place where they can be heard, then there's a potential chance of their mental health suffering. There is the chance of them leaving organisations. So the future of staff networks for me is about keeping that employee voice central, even in a world that is possibly quite stressful, quite difficult to manage into the future. It's making sure that employee voice always stays really integral to businesses.
I mean, I think a lot of other businesses that don't really have active or don't really support staff networks in their organisations are really missing out, because that knowledge and experience and, you know, the diversity of that experience that they can bring to them, it's really powerful. And, you know, thinking of it as a resource to be able to, you know, consult with this this body of people and actually have them as a bit of a critical fan to the organisation, whether it's policy or service provision, can really help to make things better for their own staff and for the customer that they're using. I think now people are looking a lot further in businesses that they do business with, and if you don't value people within your workforce, then do we really know that you're valuing your customers as well?
I think this question about the future of networks in the UK workplace is a great one, and maybe it's one that hasn't been explored that far so far. I think they are going to probably be important for some while, as has been indicated, as you've said, until there's such a point that those kind of issues are integrated within the organisation. So on one hand, the answer to that is it's going to depend where each and every organisation is in its own evolution, whether they become an inclusive organisation, whether it has a voice, everyone feels valued and so on. If you're an organisation where that's the case, then maybe there won't be a need. But I think that one of the needs for staff networks is going to be, what's the role of the human being going to be in the workplace and in organisations come mid-century? Because with things like automation, artificial intelligence, these things might seem like as though they're way off, but actually those things are here, they're near and present right now. So we're going to need to think about what's the future of the human being in the workplace? What's the future of work? How are we going to work? How are we going to be working remotely? Are going to be working in all sorts of different ways? How can we work far more collaboratively between organisations? These are all things where staff networks can play a role. So I suspect that their role will evolve, and let's see how they're needed. My hope is that they may only be needed as that space where people can connect, but even if where they exist, that they are outward looking and they're embracing of everybody, so everybody just continues to learn, develop and grow and to celebrate, actually.
I mean, first of all, I don't really understand why organisations don't get why they need a network. I mean, it's frankly the voice of your organisation. Diversity, inclusion or not, it's actually part of talent management. Your talent is there giving you feedback and giving you their thoughts and their thinking. So why wouldn't you have a group like this, first of all? It's a definite sound point for you to listen and reflect to what's going on in the heart and soul of your organisation. So no-brainer, I think you should have one, but I think when they're forced into an organisation, that creates a slightly different appetite for what it's about. I like the way of it being, kind of driven organically in an organisation where you give it a little bit of support and let it grow naturally, because that's when it's really going to have an impact on culture. And where network groups are going, I mean, ultimately it's got to link into strategy, and it's got to touch into that piece. They've got to understand what are the key drivers of this organisation, what are the levers that are going to make the biggest impact, and really if they can get to the nub of that, and if they can really impact strategy, then they're really making a difference in an organisation. So I think that for me has got to be the most powerful thing they focus on. And sometimes with network groups they focus on the other stuff as well as the strategy. But I think that's important, but they need to really focus on having a clear direction.